Greetings, fellow adventurers, and welcome to the Couple of Nerds podcast. I'm DnDWife, the creator of DnDWifeStories.com, and your co-host. Joining me is the man behind the screen, my brilliant dungeon master, and also my husband, Eguile. Say hi, Eguile.
Hey everyone, excited to be here sharing our nerdy adventures with all of you.
Absolutely. So what's Couple of Nerds all about? Well, we're diving into the realms of Extraeus, sharing our experiences, playing D&D in our apartment, and exploring the intricate tapestry of relationships both in and out of the game.
And we got some exciting segments for you all, from lore deep dives to crafting tips, artwork showcases, and relationship advice on and off the table. We've got a little bit of everything for every kind of adventurer.
So whether you're a seasoned adventurer or a tabletop newbie, we invite you to join us today. Tune in, relax, and enjoy the magic of Couple of Nerds. May your rolls be natural 20s and your adventures be legendary. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Couple of Nerds. I'm your host, DnDWife, and with me is my co-host and husband, Dungeon Master Eguile.
How's it going, everyone?
Welcome.
So today's segment is You Heard It From Us. And that's just a segment where we share some of our experiences and the tips on a lot of the issues that face our table as well as many of the community's table.
Yeah.
And we tend to do that from online polls and questionnaires that we share on our Discord, our YouTube, and our other social media, typically in the form of a question. So tonight's question is, how long are your sessions?
Yeah, big question there.
Right. So we thought that was kind of another baseline kind of way to kind of ask and kind of see exactly how everyone out there is playing.
Yeah.
Whether it's these little 2-hour kind of blips all the way to like 12-hour marathons.
Yeah, right, because it can also depend on how big your table is. If you're really small, you might meet for less time. But if you're really big, you might have to meet for longer just to make sure everybody has time to go.
Yeah, and I think there's also a lot of like the groups that meet maybe like, once a year.
Yeah.
But they're going to do like a weekend bender because they only meet once
Like
a year.
48-hour crazy binge.
Right, so we were curious. Like, we play a pretty semi-regular, quite lengthy session when we can. And it's like, we hear from other people and people when they hear about our table, they go, wow, that's so long. Like, how can you do that? And we always feel like it's not enough.
Because we try to average about, like 6 to 8 hours per session?
Oh, I mean, a minimum. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, unless we can play quite a while, it's like, why bother?
Right.
So like for us, we've been playing now for quite some time. And I feel like
6
years? 6 years.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. But I feel like that's kind of one of the mainstays and the biggest thing we have kept through all this time is that we always wanted to make sure we played for a good length of time.
Yeah, we didn't want to just meet only to play for a little bit and then how everyone has to go home because we just didn't have the time.
Yeah, like even besides being semi-regularly, right? Like we could have very easily, only played 3-4 hours because we met every other week.
Yeah.
So for some people that was crazy alone.
That's a
to
lot.
meet that often.
Yeah.
So, but we always were like, 8 hour, if we're going to make it like a work day, 8 hours
might
is
as well.
the standard,
Right?
So it was really kind of the baseline when we really first started was kind of like this 8-hour time of like, that'll give us time to kind of have snacks and breaks and learn and kind of figure it out. Cause I mean, when we started, it was a slow process.
Yeah. But thankfully we found some similar minded nerds that were also into the long sessions and were willing to join us in our craziness.
Oh yeah. I mean, we've gone through so many different tables. I mean, in the early days,
it was just 3 of us to start.
Yeah, it was a bunch of people who worked at Marie Callender's.
Yeah, and me.
Right, and we would, and it was a late night, early morning game.
We would start playing like at 10 p.m. and then finish the sessions at 3 a.m.
And only reason was because you had to go to work.
Yep, where I would then get up, go get changed, and leave for work.
And so it was like, all right, well, at that point, then I would go to bed to get up to go to work after that.
Yeah.
And that was, I mean, we played that for like a year. And it was kind of this late night crew. But then, as the table kind of changed, so did kind of our necessity for different play times.
Well, yeah, that and our jobs changed. The things, moved around. And so there were quite a few changes that needed to be made. And so the session started moving towards more of a daytime function than a nighttime.
Yeah. And then it also kind of became more locked into like a specific day of the week, where in the early part, it was kind of whenever we all happened. It was really when me and these other cooks happened to all have the same shift.
Yeah.
Because it was like, okay, we all have the same shift. We can go after work, go to my apartment and play.
Super simple.
Because we were already at work all day. So it wasn't like we didn't know where each other were. So it really was kind of made it easier to start playing when everyone had the same schedule at work.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, like our apartment was the closest to the restaurant, so
we were right around the corner.
Yeah, so people could literally like walk to our place.
It was so simple. And so, and then as we grew and as we started to really get hooked, we really started amping up how long we would play. And we would have like 12 to 14 hour long sessions,
full
of just
days,
nonstop playing. We would go from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Yep.
And usually it would go a little past a bit of that, because even though we say, oh, we'll only play for 12 hours, it's like a little more.
Don't want to let it go.
We want to finish a couple more rounds of the fight, or, dig a little deeper into the dungeon. But I think that's kind of been an important thing for us, is always been like game length.
Yeah, we've always wanted to make sure we spent enough time.
Even if you meet all day, like or every other day, right? Yeah. Like every other day you're meeting, I still feel like you need a certain amount of time to really feel like you get into it. Even as a DM, I think as a player, you kind of feel the same way.
Well, it gets tough to really get into the gameplay, especially if you're doing things like RP. Sometimes it takes a little bit of warm up to get into your character. You can't just some people are really talented and can just like pull that right out of the bat, but some of us need a little time to like ramp into it.
Yeah, and we always have and for like us, we've always had like the doors open policy, and so we'd always give kind of like a band would. It's like, hey, the show starts at 3, but the gate opens at 10.
Yeah,
so it's a way where some of our players can show up early, get all that kind of side talk and all
nervous
that
energy out,
get it all out, and have like a little bit of time before we actually start playing. And I saw that kind of helps us out too, getting into it, because really it's all about that time. And if you really are starting to get into it, but then it's like, oh, the session's over. Like, and then not only that, but it's also tough. We found that you need time, especially when it comes to like things like combat. I mean, it's so crazy how I'm like, oh yeah, we'll do this fight, and then we'll roll into something else, and then the fight takes like 6.5 hours to go down, and then it's like, oh, okay, I guess the fight is what we're doing today.
This whole session, because I mean, with the 5e combat system, it really is difficult to get it done quickly, because every person gets a turn, and they can take forever to make up your mind sometimes.
I mean, right, and it's why we've kind of adapted over the years and created our own style, because oh my goodness, it would take so long back in the day that it would be like an entire session would just be, okay, well, this 8-hour day is going to be this one combat, and it's going to entirely be this one combat. And a lot of times for us, like a lot of our play time and a lot of the ways that we played really kind of got relegated by our players.
It really did.
We happen to get a kind of more eclectic mix of age groups and brackets.
Yep.
And in doing so, they kind of had, and this kind of plays into the whole couples of nerds, and that their spouses obviously didn't want them playing at 3 a.m. and they have their, they have children themselves, so they can't really be up all night. So I find that funny. That's really kind of what changed and kind of limited us, and that we always joke that if this one or now other players who have same commitments were to not be there, it's like, man, will we go back to be playing till like 4 or 5 in the morning? And I feel like we would if we were given the opportunity.
I don't know. I don't think we could anymore. We're a little older. It's a little tougher now.
Right. So it really comes down to kind of, what we had as players and what me as a DM really wanted to give off, right? So we always kind of had, a focus session on role play for us. So because there's we focus on role play, you need that time.
You do.
You can't just kind of fast forward and go, no, you guys want to talk to every guard, every person, every stall.
We want to read every clue.
So if we only have 4 hours, I mean, that's going to be tough.
It's going to take forever to get through whatever quest we're going through.
Or your story is going to go at a snail's pace, and hopefully you meet regularly, or you're really going to have a hard time time keeping up.
Got to take really, really detailed notes.
Oh, I mean, you got to be basically a stenographer at that point. It's half the reason why we record our sessions is also another way that we kind of keep kind of that, if anyone ever needs at our table to kind of rehear or figure out what happened, they can bring a hard drive.
Makes it a little easier.
Download the episode, and then they can listen to it at home to catch whatever they need to.
Yeah.
So it is kind of a fun thing that can be put out later, especially if you record your own sessions.
Yeah. So really, the dynamic of our table was really affected by the people playing it. So now we have more like a specific set day with a specific set of hours. It's become a lot more organized.
I mean, we've been playing D&D on Sundays for ever.
At least the past 3 years.
At least, I mean, I can't even remember when we've ever played. I mean, the idea of playing D&D on a weekday would blow my mind.
It would be so weird.
We've always played on Sundays.
It would throw me off, and I'd definitely be like, well, "Is it the weekend?"
Yeah, I would definitely be thrown off. But it's merely just because we make sure to have all our time and energy so that we can have our sessions. Because man, if we could, we'd probably be playing almost every other day.
We would.
But that brings us to the question that we thought we'd throw out to our community and see, maybe are we like everyone else, or do a lot of people play very small, short sessions out there? And so we asked the question, how long are your play lengths? Like, how long are your session lengths?
Yeah, we were curious.
And we kind of found when looking and comparing all of our social medias and comparing them, it was kind of on an average of between 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah, that really seemed to be the sort of golden time for sessions.
And I found it funny because there was very rare far and few between votes for the shorter hours.
Yeah.
But there were a few kind of stragglers for the 12 hours, the 24-hour long session, though I feel like that's someone kind of overestimating how long they play. Because that's a lot of D&D in one shot. But really what it kind of showed us was that, we kind of are in that kind of green zone of what people feel is enough time to really get into the game. Yeah,
because I agree. 3 to 4 hours does not really seem to me like enough time to really get anything done of significance in a campaign.
Yeah, and there was a lot of kind of, questions as to, like we were talking, the length is there, but then it's also like, okay, well, how many times though?
That's
how
true.
Frequent,
that does affect.
So I feel like when looking at some of the questions, and this might be maybe the next question we pose, is how frequent do you meet? So that we can get a better understanding. Because some of those guys who might be saying, 12-hour long sessions, well, that might be every 6 months.
Yeah.
And that way it's like, well, on average, you're actually getting less D&D time.
Right. And then they're only playing one shots that whole day so that they don't have to worry about taking notes or anything like that.
Exactly, right? Because there's so many, not only games, but just styles of play.
Oh, yeah.
We are that unique one where we want these like long-running narratives with heavy RP.
Epic campaign.
And that really is what you guys as my players kind of love. But obviously, if you're coming in for a hack and slash dungeon crawl, you want 12 hours so that you can,
really
kill
get
as
it done.
goblins and everything as you can.
Yeah.
Because, that's where you're going to get all your experience and that's where you're going to get all your fun. So I think that's really kind of a cool idea and kind of see that there is kind of this general consensus of that, you really want to dedicate a good chunk of your time to play if you're really going to hopefully get into a story.
Yeah.
I could see, if somebody says, hey, I meet, every we play for 2 hours, but it is the only maybe time they can get. No, I get that. Like, if that's the time you can play, then I would take every cookie crumble I can get.
If it's 2 hours, I'll take it.
But it's one of those things where I'm curious as to hear kind of like, how do they play? Because how can, the game really be ran in only 2 hours?
Yeah. Sometimes it's something that you can't really fathom, but if it's a really good group of friends who kind of already have an idea of what they're doing, where they're going,
or a couple playing
together, then it can work. It can be seamless.
Yeah, because I think the biggest focus, and it was kind of like in the early days of this podcast, and we kind of spoke on that. It doesn't matter how you play or what you play.
Yeah.
It also doesn't matter how long you play.
Yeah, because you can find an immense amount of enjoyment out of 2 hours and find 12 hours tedious,
I
you
mean,
know?
if I can watch a movie that's 2 hours long and it gives me this roaring narrative that I'm meeting for the
epic
first
campaign.
time, you can do a one shot in the same amount of time.
Absolutely.
It just, obviously, you have to be on the same kind of understanding as a group that, hey, this is like Last Action Hero. We're going to run through it and you just go with it. When I say action,
Yes,
I mean action.
go.
But, that could work for a lot of people
It
because,
can.
hell, they're still playing D&D.
Yeah. And, sometimes it can be difficult with things like work to really get together for a specific day and play for 9-12 hours. That's not doable all the time. But, if after work you can go to someone's house real quick, play for 2 hours, and then still go home and be able to get stuff done, that could really help.
Yeah, and I think we can compare a lot to our previous questions when we asked like how people play, whether it's in person or online, and I think that also affects how long someone can play because in person is one thing, but when you're online, you can meet at all kinds of strange hours because now time zones are no longer an issue, and that you can play across different time zones, kind of like the old days of MMO, in that if you worked the night shift, you would play with the Australians because it's their afternoon.
Yep, so they're all on.
Right, so you would have people to play with because they're awake because at your server, it's 3 a.m. and no one's online.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of same thing where like there are definitely ways where if you have a strange schedule, you could find other people to play that have basically the same schedule because, I mean, there are nerds on all kinds of timelines.
Everywhere, all over the world, playing at any time, at any hour. It's amazing what you can do with the internet these days.
But if you would like to share some of your insights or answer some of our questions, be sure to check out the Couple of Nerds Discord community.
Absolutely. Let us know what you think. Participate in our future polls, discussions, and check out any of our activities related to tabletop gaming and other nerdy topics.
And if you have any suggestions for questions, please let us know either in the comments or in the Discord itself.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear from you, and any information you give us is something we can use for later.
And we'll shout you out if your question's chosen to be the next question, so please check it out.
Yeah, you can leave your moniker along with the question, and we will shout you out while we talk about it.
Yeah, but obviously with like 6 years of gaming behind our belts and not only that, but also an extensive life of scheduling and making everything, we have kind of learned a thing or two. And hopefully, like we say, the community is all about sharing experiences.
Yeah, we hope to pass it on.
And kind of learning from our mistakes and learning from everyone else's. And so take what we say with a grain of salt, but this is just stuff that we've had that seems to have worked.
Yeah. Some of the things that we have learned from running our own game sessions and having our own players are things like preparing ahead of time, whether it's your snacks or the things that you're going to use in your session.
The table the night before, get all your, as a DM, get all your stuff done the day before.
It is so helpful to be able to wake up the day of the session and just be like, oh, everything's done. I don't have to rush this morning.
Right. You take that extra hour of sleep if you can get it, because obviously if you're preparing for a long session, you're going to want to be as rest up and not necessarily worrying about if everything's in its right place.
And if you're doing a longer session and you're doing something like a lunch in between, you can always pre-prepare some of the lunch items. That way, when it is time, you can spend less time cooking and more time interacting with your friends.
Oh, yeah, right. Like crock pot meals become the name of the game because you can
easy.
Start them when you wake up. They're ready by the midpoint of the session. They're great. They're inexpensive. And they really cut out a lot of that time. Yeah,
and you don't have to sit there babying them. So if you're the DM and you're hosting and you have all this going on, you don't have to sit there cooking all the food while everybody else has fun either.
Oh yeah. I mean, there was a handful of sessions where we would be cooking this big meal. I think we did like burgers and brats and all this. But it was like 2.5 hours between cooking, eating, and everyone talking before we really got back into the game.
Yeah, so it was tough.
We spent 2.5 hours of not playing D&D.
No.
We could have been playing D&D.
Now, we sound super ungrateful because these are during 12-hour sessions, and oh no, we lost 2 hours.
Hey,
for us...
I love playing every minute I can get. And I mean, I'm the dungeon master.
Right.
And so, we really think, and I think the community agrees too, that like really that 4-hour mark is kind of what you should stretch for.
Yeah.
And that's for us
at minimum.
That's always been our like worst case scenario minimum, because ours is like 6 hours.
Yeah.
but like we say, 4 is I think the best, where you can have a pretty good story, a pretty good beginning, middle, and end, and everyone can have an opportunity to kind of get a moment to shine and kind of have their, and it makes it a little easier for pacing for the DM. Obviously, any extra moments you could get, I would recommend taking them.
Right.
But really, it's that kind of that sweet spot, so you can have a little bit of everything. You can kind of squeeze in a quick combat. You can have a role play session with an evil merchant, and still go home feeling like you got something done. Yeah,
you got a little extra done there. And another thing that I wanted to kind of put out there as a tip would be, we talked earlier about the nervous energy that sort of surrounds players before a session and how dissipating that is important. So one of the tips I would recommend is have a start time for the session, but have an earlier time where people can come, talk, converse, even snack, and get all that nervous energy out of their system before the session.
Yeah, because I find that really helps with like the crosstalk that sometimes happens from like outside the story stuff.
Yeah.
Because you guys are like super excited to also play, but you're also super excited to see one another because you're, adventuring heroes together in combat. And so, you can kind of cut down a little bit of that stuff and help people kind of get into the groove beforehand. And I think that's always really helped us for each session. And it doesn't have to be like an hour or, 3 hours before, but like just like a half hour.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be any crazy amount of time, but even 15 minutes can go a long way to just letting people kind of meet each other, greet each other, and then get into the zone for playing.
Yeah, and I think like what always works for us is like having a dedicated time is very important, but really the idea of like squeezing in D&D in certain places where it's like, oh, okay, I have like 3 hours here where I can do it. It's like, that's not always the best in my opinion.
Not always great.
Right? Because it gets to where sometimes you're trying to put too much crunch into your D&D.
Yeah, if the focus is all about playing as much as you can, sometimes that can take a little bit of the enjoyment out of the activity for you.
Yeah, and so really what it comes down to is I another thing you can do is, and we have it, and it sometimes goes crazy, and it's hard to moderate, but you can have a player chat group in your phone or on Discord, which is what we use both of, and that's great in that I have a few that are role play specific, and so these are ones where outside of the game, when the player characters are at like camp or something, they can text each other in character, and I'm kind of observing the conversation, so I know what's going on as a DM. I'm kind of peeping in on what's going on.
Yeah.
But it allows for like that kind of extraneous conversation or things that you want to do, but because you don't really have the time in the session, you can get a lot of extra session time in just a simple chat log.
Yeah, you can get a lot of stuff done ahead of time, a lot of decisions, especially if let's say the party's faced with something they need to do that coming session and they need to make a decision about it. Doing that in chat beforehand can really help streamline that.
Yeah, and making sure it focuses on like a role play specific also helps people, because texting role play is sometimes easier for people than spoken word.
Yeah, to get into it, especially, right? You can't really have accents in written format.
we find a pretty good way to get around it.
We try, we do what we can.
But the other thing too is also coming in with like a clear thought or objective as to what you guys want to do, both as a DM and a player.
Yeah.
Like as a DM, I'm always like, okay, this session I would like to see XYZ done, and so how can I see if that gets done? And whether it gets done or not, I don't necessarily know, but I have a general idea of how I want to see the day go.
Yeah.
And I imagine as a player, you kind of have a similar kind of way to see the story.
Absolutely. Like if I know that we're doing something specific, then I will not have like a crazy plan or anything written out, but I'll definitely have an idea in my head as to what I want my character to do for that period of time that whatever quest we're doing or whatever we're faced with doing.
Yeah, and I say for me, and it's going to sound like it, it's one of the last tips I have is that, and it's going to sound weird because it's take a break.
Yeah.
And that, I'm not saying, 30-minute, 1 hour break, but take like a 10-minute break. You would be amazed how much that can kind of like reset the mood, reset the setting, and just going, okay, hey, take 5. And everyone just kind of steps away for a moment, grabs their snacks. You as a DM can get something to eat, shovel it real fast. But by doing that, it really kind of helps refocus the group. So instead of trying to like corral 4 or 5 players to get back on the same point, make everyone kind of step away and then come back into the line. And we've done that quite a few times, where even if I'm like, I just don't know what's going on for a moment, I need a moment to think, just have the story walk away for a moment, and it really helps you kind of recollect your thoughts without wasting a lot of time.
Yeah. And I find really effective too that taking these breaks either right before or right after combat helps as well, because it helps either clear that nervous energy from the combat, or it helps kind of gear you up for it.
Also, big emotional spikes are great. I've done a lot of that where it's like, okay, let's take a break, take a breather. Everyone's a little sappy. Let's tear out their, dab out them eyes, a little sappy. But I think that's kind of other ways that you can, that besides just going, okay, we meet for 4 hours, there are a lot of ways that you can help yourself get through that and mitigate some of the extra time you don't need to be using, but also ensure that you're getting the maximum amount of playtime.
Yeah, doing that also in things like combat helps minimize those long sort of dead times.
and it is too, like if you are a combat base table, hats off to you, because your tables must be insanely long to get some of these epic fights to get going, because we always kind of have to do a shortened version because we don't want to sit there for 8 hours navigating the battle,
clashing with armies.
But I think this was another question answered, kind of what we were thinking was going to be, where it was just kind of this 4 to 6 hours is that sweet spot. It's kind of the most, and to me, I think it's more of, it's what people can play and not what they necessarily want to play.
Yeah, because I imagine a lot of us D&D nerds would love to just play all day if we could.
Yeah, I think there's like a feasible thought of like, you could find 4 to 6 hours on a regular basis.
Yeah, in your free time pool, essentially.
Right, to dedicate to playing. And so, just how like we've had like varying experiences with both short, long. I mean, we used to play up all night, and then we were playing just nonstop marathons.
Yeah, it was really crazy for a while, but that isn't for everybody. So you really do have to kind of sit there and find out how you want to play, what you want your sessions to look like. If you're going to join a table or run a table, think about what you want out of it.
Yeah. And so, as we saw with what the community also kind of came to an agreement on, is that, as much as we want to play, it's kind of, we also know that time is valuable.
Yeah.
And so you kind of do have to work around this kind of smaller 4 to 6 hour window. And so, they kind of see that there is a want, but it's like, man, the time, the value in those 6 hours is so important to us.
It really is. You can live a lifetime in 6 hours if you're good about it.
Right. And so through our still small playtime than I imagine other DMs and players out there, but 6 years, we've learned quite a bit. And hopefully through some of our trial and error and our experiences, you can use some of the tips that we've shared to help yourself out.
Yeah, or to help out your table. Or if you're thinking of starting or joining a table, maybe these tips will help kind of gauge what you're looking to get out of it.
Yeah, maybe you're just kind of thinking of, man, how can I help wrangle my players on? Just take a break.
Yeah.
A 10-minute breather will change the entire scope of the game.
Or give a specific focus to your sessions. That'll definitely give you guys sort of something to look to, something to focus on.
But once again, we thank you all for listening.
Yeah,
we do know there's you're all out there. We're now celebrating our 21st subscriber on YouTube, which is a big deal for us because once again it shows that there are people out there listening and wanting to join in this community and wanting to be a part of the Couple of Nerds community.
Yes, thank you so much, guys. And if you really like what you're listening to, leave a comment comment below, like and subscribe, or make a comment on our Couple of Nerds Discord community. We would love to hear from you, and we'd love to get any ideas that you have on there as well.
Also, be sure to check out our YouTube at Couple of Nerds Productions, where we have all our shorts from kind of behind the scenes here at home with us, as well as all the video podcasts that are getting some new and increased looks and videos embedded. So please check those out too.
Yep. Be sure to check out some new templates we've got going. Thank you so much and have a good night.
Have a good one, everyone.
And that concludes today's journey through the realm of Couple of Nerds. We hope you had a blast exploring the intricate world of Extraeus. Don't miss out on the visual extravaganza over at our YouTube page at Couple of Nerds Podcast. It's where the magic comes to life with exclusive video segments, art previews, and a peek behind the curtain.
Dive deeper into our adventures by visiting DnDWifeStories.com, your haven for all our podcast transcripts and a treasure trove of content dedicated to the captivating universe of Extraeus.
Your unwavering support is our greatest treasure. Take a moment to weave your thoughts into a review and hit that subscribe button for an enchanting journey with Couple of Nerds.
Join us beyond the podcast in the Extraeus Project Discord. Connect with us, the creators, and even the travelers themselves. Witness the magic unfold in live drawing streams, game alongside us, and step into our digital tavern, the Bard's Haven. Share your stories and characters with fellow adventurers. Visit DnDWifeStories.com for the link to join our vibrant community.
Stay tuned for more tales, more laughs, and more insight into the world of tabletop gaming. Until then, may your dice be kind, your campaigns epic, and your adventures legendary.